Darth Plagueis represents a paradox in Sith power rankings, a lord of extraordinary capability and ambition who achieved remarkable accomplishments, yet ultimately failed at his most fundamental objective, leaving behind only a legacy of manipulation and unfulfilled potential. Born as a moon banker with exceptional intelligence and resources, he spent centuries accumulating wealth and power through economic domination and political manipulation, rather than through direct force mastery or military conquest. His true strength lay not in lightsaber skill or devastating force attacks, but in his unparalleled understanding of galactic economics, banking systems, and the invisible mechanisms of power that operated beneath overt political structures. His most significant achievement was the development of Sith alchemy techniques that allowed manipulation of midi-chlorian counts and biological manipulation on unprecedented scales. He discovered methods to artificially create force-sensitive beings and theoretically achieve immortality through biological mastery, capabilities that no other Sith Lord had successfully developed. His research into life extension and biological manipulation represented genuine innovation within Sith philosophy and practice. Yet Plagueis' greatest weakness was his reliance on indirect methods and his inability to wield the Force with the devastating power that defined other Sith Lords. In direct combat, he was competent but not exceptional. His power derived from preparation, resources, and manipulation, rather than from force mastery that would allow him to overcome skilled opponents through raw ability. Most critically, his downfall came not from external enemies, but from his own apprentice, Palpatine, who murdered him in his sleep. This betrayal revealed a fundamental flaw in his character. Despite centuries of political manipulation and strategic planning, he failed to recognize the threat posed by his own student. His death was ignominious and sudden, stripping away all the elaborate structures he had built and leaving his legacy entirely in Palpatine's hands. He is ranked in the lower tier of Sith power, not because he lacked capability or ambition, but because his power was indirect, fragile, and ultimately failed at its most critical test, preserving his own existence against threat from those closest to him. Count Dooku occupies a unique and troubling position in Sith power rankings. Extraordinarily skilled, politically sophisticated, and militarily brilliant, yet fundamentally limited by his refusal to fully commit to Sith doctrine. As a former Jedi Master, Dooku possessed exceptional lightsaber mastery, advanced Force abilities, and centuries of combat experience that made him a formidable opponent in direct confrontation. His political acumen allowed him to orchestrate the Separatist crisis, command the droid armies of the Techno-Union, and manipulate galactic events on scales few Sith could achieve. Yet these accomplishments mask a critical weakness. Dooku never truly accepted the Sith philosophy of absolute power and domination. He served Palpatine not out of genuine Sith devotion, but out of philosophical agreement and contractual arrangement, maintaining emotional attachments and principles that true Sith Lords abandoned. His relationship with his apprentice Asajj Ventress revealed this limitation. He trained her, but refused to fully embrace her, maintaining boundaries and expressing concern for her welfare in ways that contradicted pure Sith ideology. When confronted by Anakin and Obi-Wan, Dooku's confidence wavered. When offered escape, he chose dialogue rather than absolute victory. Most tellingly, Dooku never truly ruled. He served as Palpatine's subordinate, executing orders rather than commanding galactic destiny. His final defeat came not from superior power, but from hesitation and misplaced hope that Anakin might see reason, that somehow redemption remained possible. Dooku's tragedy was being too much Jedi and not enough Sith. His intellect and skills were remarkable, but his inability to fully surrender to darkness meant he remained forever second tier, powerful enough to challenge but never strong enough to dominate. Darth Maul was designed as the perfect instrument of death, a Zabrak warrior bred from birth to be nothing but a weapon, trained exclusively in combat and dark side aggression with no political ambition or independent thought required. Palpatine crafted him as an unstoppable assassin and enforcer, and in pure combat capability, Maul was extraordinary. His double-bladed lightsaber mastery, acrobatic fighting style, and force sensitivity made him capable of overwhelming most opponents through sheer ferocity and technical excellence. His defeat of Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn demonstrated this lethality. a Jedi of extraordinary skill and experience, fell to Maul's overwhelming assault. Yet this victory revealed Maul's fundamental limitation. He was a tool, not a strategist. He lacked the political cunning, long-term vision, or independent decision-making capability that true Sith Lords possessed. His fall to Obi-Wan Kenobi exposed a critical flaw. Against an opponent who could match his technical skill while possessing superior tactical awareness, Maul's aggression became a liability rather than an asset. After his apparent death and subsequent resurrection, Maul demonstrated surprising adaptability and survival instinct, eventually commanding the Mandalorians and pursuing his own agenda. Yet even in independence, Maul remained fundamentally limited. He was a predator, not a ruler, excelling at violence but struggling with the complex political maneuvering required to build and maintain power. His obsession with revenge against Obi-Wan consumed him, keeping him locked in the past rather than building future power. Maul ranked higher than Dooku in raw combat ability, but his inability to transcend his role as a weapon prevented him from achieving true Sith dominance. He was feared and formidable, but never master of his own destiny. Anakin Skywalker possessed the raw potential to become the most powerful Force user in galactic history. His midi-chlorian count exceeded even Yoda's. His connection to the Force was unmatched, and his combat abilities during his prime were nearly unparalleled. Yet Vader's ranking in true Sith power reflects not what he could have been, but what he actually became. A magnificent instrument permanently crippled by his own choices and Palpatine's manipulation. Vader's fundamental weakness was emotional dependency. Unlike true Sith Lords who viewed attachments as tools to exploit or obstacles to eliminate, Vader clung to connections that undermined his power. His love for Padme became the very lever Palpatine used to manipulate him toward darkness. His obsessive fear of loss, rather than liberation from fear, motivated his pursuit of power. After his transformation into a cyborg, Vader's physical limitations severely constrained his Force abilities. His severed limbs and burned body prevented him from accessing his full potential. Breathing apparatus, mechanical joints, and constant physical pain created barriers between Vader and the Force that no amount of training could overcome. He remained formidable, one of the most feared figures in the galaxy. Yet everyone who encountered him understood he was diminished, a shadow of what Anakin might have become. Most critically, Vader never truly accepted Sith philosophy. He served Palpatine out of necessity and fear rather than genuine devotion to dark side ideals. His redemption at the end, saving Luke at the cost of his own life, proved he never fully committed to the Sith path. Vader ranked higher than Maul in scope of influence and strategic importance, yet his constant internal conflict, physical limitations, and emotional attachments prevented him from achieving true Sith mastery. He was powerful, but never truly free. Darth Revan stands as one of the most enigmatic figures in Sith history, a Force user of extraordinary power whose legacy was defined not by unbroken dominion, but by the shocking decision to abandon darkness entirely. As a Sith Lord, Revan commanded vast armies, conquered entire star systems, and wielded the Force with a mastery that few have equaled. His strategic brilliance allowed him to outmaneuver the Jedi Order itself, and his Force sensitivity granted access to powers that seemed to defy natural limitation. What separated Revan from lesser Sith was his complete comprehension of Sith philosophy. He understood domination, embraced the power of emotion and will, and orchestrated conflicts across galactic scales. Yet Revan's greatest power became his greatest vulnerability. His consciousness, his capacity for strategic brilliance, also enabled him to question his own path. After his capture and reconditioning by the Jedi, Revan chose to abandon the Sith philosophy entirely, a choice that fundamentally redefined his power. His redemption was not weakness, but a conscious decision to channel his extraordinary Force sensitivity toward different objectives. In ranking, Revan represents the paradox of potential unrealized. He possessed the capability and understanding to become the most dominant Sith Lord in history, yet deliberately chose a different path. His power was real and devastating, but ultimately constrained by his own philosophical evolution. Revan ranked higher than Vader in terms of pure mastery and strategic scope, commanding greater armies and achieving more comprehensive galactic conquest. Yet his decision to turn away from the Sith prevented him from ascending to the highest tier of Sith power. demonstrating that true Sith mastery requires not just capability but unwavering commitment to the dark side's principles. Darth Sidious represents perhaps the most calculating and comprehensively victorious Sith Lord in recorded history. Unlike other Sith whose ambitions were thwarted by internal conflict, external opposition, or fundamental character flaws, Palpatine orchestrated a plan spanning decades that achieved what few thought possible: the complete destruction of the Jedi Order and the transformation of the Republic into a totalitarian galactic empire under his absolute control. His mastery of manipulation exceeded anything in Sith tradition. He played opposing forces against each other with surgical precision, turning Anakin Skywalker from Jedi to Sith through psychological exploitation rather than direct coercion, orchestrating wars that weakened the Jedi while strengthening his position, and positioning himself as the indispensable solution to crises he himself created. Palpatine's Force abilities were extraordinary. His command of Force lightning, ability to choke individuals across vast distances, and power to influence minds gave him capabilities that few could match. Yet his true mastery was political and psychological manipulation on galactic scales. Where other Sith relied on military might or direct force confrontation, Palpatine weaponized patience, strategy, and the systematic exploitation of his enemies' weaknesses. He transformed the Sith from hunted refugees into rulers of the galaxy, achieving what the Rule of Two was designed to prevent: stability and sustained dominion, rather than constant succession wars and internal conflict. His only significant vulnerability emerged from overconfidence. His certainty in his own power and the inevitability of his victory blinded him to genuine threats, particularly the possibility of redemption within his own apprentice. His assumption that Anakin would obey without question, that Luke could be turned without resistance, and that his power made him invulnerable created openings his enemies exploited. Yet these failures came only after he had achieved unprecedented success: the complete annihilation of the Jedi Order, and decades of absolute galactic rule. Darth Nihilus represents perhaps the most terrifying incarnation of Sith power, not mastery through strategy or manipulation, but domination through absolute hunger and consuming presence. Unlike traditional Sith Lords who wielded the Force as a tool or extension of will, Nihilus embodied the Force itself as pure destructive hunger. His very existence drained life force energy from everything around him, consuming entire star systems and leaving nothing but lifeless husks in his wake. Planets that once teemed with billions fell silent under his presence, their populations extinguished not through warfare or genocide, but through sheer proximity to his consuming hunger. What made Nihilus uniquely powerful was the scale and inevitability of his destruction. Traditional Sith Lords could be opposed, negotiated with, or challenged through cunning or superior force ability. Nihilus could not be reasoned with. He was hunger incarnate, a force of nature more than a conscious being. His mastery of force abilities transcended conventional understanding. He didn't use dark side powers so much as he embodied them completely. Yet Nihilus's ultimate weakness was philosophical rather than practical. His consciousness became increasingly fragmented as his hunger consumed his sense of self. He transformed from a being with ambitions and goals into merely an instrument of consumption, unable to truly rule because ruling requires some form of vision or purpose beyond pure destruction. His defeat came not from superior force power, but from the realization that his existence contradicted the Sith goal of dominion. A dead galaxy cannot be ruled. Nihilus represented absolute destructive power, but ultimate purposelessness. He was stronger than Palpatine in raw force capability and destructive capacity, yet paradoxically weaker because his power served no long-term objective. He was a weapon without a wielder, hunger without satisfaction, power without purpose. At the absolute apex of the Sith power ladder stands Darth Krayt, not the weakened version encountered centuries later, but the Sith Emperor at the height of his dominion during the height of his power. Krayt achieved what no other Sith Lord successfully maintained: eternal rule over a galactic empire that spanned millennia. His mastery of Sith alchemy granted him literal immortality, not through temporary resurrection or spirit binding, but through complete transcendence of physical limitation. While other Sith Lords rose and fell across centuries, Krayt endured, adapting his strategy, refining his power and maintaining absolute dominion across unimaginable spans of time. His Force abilities encompassed every aspect of Sith mastery, devastating offensive power through Force storms and devastating dark side attacks, absolute control over his subordinates through mind domination and force binding, and the ability to drain life force from entire populations simultaneously. His command of Sith alchemy allowed creation of immortal warriors, biological weapons, and technologies that bent natural law itself. Where Palpatine achieved temporary galactic conquest, Krayt achieved permanent civilizational control. His Sith Empire functioned not as a brief regime destined for collapse, but as an organized, self-perpetuating system that survived for centuries under his iron rule. Krayt's only true vulnerability was time itself, the very immortality that granted him unmatched power, which also meant he accumulated enemies, faced countless rebellions, and required constant vigilance to maintain dominion. Yet unlike mortal rulers who would be exhausted by such eternal struggle, Krayt's Force mastery allowed him to rule indefinitely without diminishment. He represents the ultimate realization of Sith philosophy: absolute power, eternal rule, and the complete subjugation of all opposition across millennia. No other Sith Lord achieved such comprehensive, sustained domination. If you enjoyed this ranking of Sith Lords, please like the video and subscribe for more Star Wars analysis and deep dives into the Force. Which Sith Lord do you think deserves a higher ranking? Let us know in the comments and let's chat below. As always, may the Force be with you.